When Reverend Amatuanahi Anoa'i and Peter Maivia made a blood brother pact, they united their two families in a way that would change wrestling forever. Their combined bloodlines, see what we did there, would go on to dominate every aspect of the wrestling world as performers, trainers, bookers, while some would even go on to become stars outside of the ring. Each member of the family has brought something to the industry, but which one has left the biggest impact? We have traced every single Anoa'i affiliated wrestler and ranked them based on their abilities inside the ring, their kayfabe achievements, and their general standing within the business. However, the Anoa'i family is very, very large and sprawling with many branches and offshoots, so apologies if we've left anyone off. We really did do our best. Do not send Haku after us. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and this is every Anoa'i family wrestler ranked from worst to best. Join us. Number 40, Tamako T. Fatu. Our journey with the Anoa'i family begins with a man who is only recently taking his first steps into the world of professional wrestling. A son of Rikishi, get used to hearing that by the way, Tamiko Fatu announced in 2023 that he would be following in his father's footsteps. Really, there's not much to say at this point. There's barely any information out there about how Tamiko is doing. He has no cage match profile, his own Instagram has a grand total of 2 posts on it, and he doesn't even have his own website, instead opting to sell merchandise via his dad's page. Without much to go on, we really had no choice but to put this poor lad right at the bottom of our rankings. For all we know, he doesn't even wrestle anymore and might be working as a very intimidating postman. Not likely, but also not impossible. Number 39, Peter Maivia Jr. High Chief Peter Maivia is jointly responsible for the creation of the Samoan wrestling dynasty as we know it today, but the son who shares his name made a significantly smaller impact. Peter Maivia Jr., who also wrestled under the name Junior Maivia, followed his pops into the wrestling game, working the West Coast and Hawaiian territories where his family made themselves famous. Sadly, not much information about his time in the squared circle has survived. He had a handful of recorded matches in the NWA's Polynesian territory in the mid-80s and had the briefest of brief stints in WWF. Lil Pete doesn't seem to have done too much in the industry despite having such a famous moniker, although there was every chance he was a massive player in the Hawaiian territory and nobody bothered to keep records of it. Although that promotion was run by his father's wife, Leah, so you'd think she would have made a bit more of an effort to jot some of his accomplishments down. Number 38, Toa Maivia. Another son of the High Chief, Toa Maivia made a slightly bigger dent in the business than his brother, but not really by too much. Born to Peter and Leah, Toa was just a child when his father passed away, but that didn't stop him from carrying on his old man's legacy in between the ropes. He seems to have spent most of his time wrestling for World Extreme Wrestling, the Florida-based promotion originally run by Ather of the Wild Samoans. Sadly, his in-ring days seem to have only been between 2003 and 2006. He appears to have stayed within the sphere, landing a cameo role in the 2008 movie The Wrestler, but otherwise this is all there is to go on. By the way, this is not the same person that used to compete on American Gladiators under the name Toa. That was Tanawahi Reed, great nephew of Leah Maivia, who is also known as the main stunt double for his cousin, The Rock. Number 37, Ricky Johnson. Ricky Johnson is the late Rocky Johnson's brother, therefore making him Dwayne's uncle and a member of the Anoa'i family via his brother's marriage. He was also a wrestler, though not nearly as successful as his sibling, hence why he's chilling all the way down at 36. He seems to have gotten into the biz a lot later than his bro, making his first recorded in-ring appearance in the early 1980s. He spent time working for Canadian promotion Maple Leaf Wrestling, but would find greater success teaming up with Rocky in the NWA Polynesian territory. The Johnsons won the promotion's tag team championships in the mid-80s and would defend them against the likes of Adrian Adonis, Bad News Brown, and Kevin Sullivan. Ricky would also win the Canadian Wrestling Association's heavyweight championship at some points, though details on that are sketchy at best. Ricky's last recorded match was in 2007, so he had a pretty decent go of it, but his time in the ring pales in comparison to most of his famous in-laws. He never even showed up on Young Rock, which says it all, eh? Number 36, Zilla Fatu. Despite only beginning his wrestling career in 2023, Zilla Fatu has already made headlines around the wrestling world. Real name name Isaiah Fatu, Zilla is the son of the late great Eddie Fatu, better known as Jamal and Umaga. He made huge waves in Booker T's reality of wrestling promotion, drawing high praise from the two-time Hall of Famer, but left the company after just 3 months. After he split from the Booker man, Zilla rocked up in Game Changer Wrestling, teaming with his cousin Jacob Fatu. In 2024, he also partnered up with deathmatch legend Nick Gage in a match and competed in a 4-way Punjabi prison match for the promotion's tag titles. Considering it's still so early in his career, it didn't feel right to put Zilla any higher than this on the list. However, the rate at which he's picking up momentum, his standing may significantly improve if we ever revisit this topic. Number 35, Journey Fatu. Sam Fatu, better known as the Tonga Kid, was clearly a fan of the classic rock band behind the song Don't Stop Believin' because he named one of his kids after them. Journey Fatu broke into the business via Supreme Pro Wrestling, a promotion based out of California. He and his brother Jacob, watch out for him later, resurrected the classic Samoan SWAT team name and went on a tear through the tag team division, capturing the tag titles in the process. Since splitting from his brother, Journey wrestled a bit more for SPW and made pit stops at various other indies around the country, including a match where he teamed with his father against Ricky Reyes and Chavo Guerrero Jr. He's recently found a home in the world of deathmatch wrestling, which I'm sure his dad is just thrilled about, and teamed with his big bro from time to time. At just 28 years old, Journey's journey is far from over, and he's still very much active at the time of recording. Although, if he continues down the deathmatch path, his career might not last as long as he would like. Number 34, Vertigo Rivera. It's time for a look at a member of the Anoa'i family by marriage, as Vertigo Rivera is the husband of Vale Anoa'i, daughter of Wild Samoan Afa. Vertigo has been in the game since the mid-2000s, working his way up through IWA Puerto Rico and the World Wrestling Council before finding a more lucrative home in his father-in-law's promotion, WXW. He's still active in the company, and if the internet is to be believed, one of his most recent matches was defending their top title against Loki. So he's married to the boss's daughter and in a position of power in kayfabe. Is Vertigo the Anoa'i version of Triple H? Anyway, though he's definitely an experienced and accomplished performer, Vertigo has never made it in any major promotion. He's wrestled a dark segment on NXT and was obliterated in a 3-on-2 handicap on SmackDown against the Bludgeon Brothers. Number 33, Ava. When Simone Johnson, daughter of The Rock, joined WWE in 2020, she became the first ever 4th-generation performer to set foot in the company. How has her career gone since then? Well, yeah, about that. With her new name of Ava Rain, later shortened to just Ava, Johnson debuted at NXT as part of the Schism alongside Joe Gacy and the grizzled young veterans who looked like they were hating every single second of it. This stable was roundly mocked for being spooky nonsense, and Ava's wooden acting certainly didn't help things. She made her in-ring debut at 2023's Stand and Deliver as part of an 8-person tag, which was hardly enough time to show off her in-ring abilities. In fact, at time of recording, Ava has only wrestled 6 times in total for NXT. Recently, she's taken up the position of the brand's general manager, and her acting skills have improved, although that's not really saying that much. Ava is so far up this list because she's somehow been able to land a prominent position within the world's leading promotion, at least on their 3rd brand anyway. But in terms of actual in-ring accomplishments, this raindrop has barely made a splash. Yes, I am sorry for that one. Number 32, Lance Anoa'i. Son of Samu, grandson of Afa, and great-grandson of Patriarch Reverend Amatuanahi Anoa'i, Lance Anoa'i is one of the newest generations of the Samoan wrestling dynasty, despite the fact that he's actually older than Solo Sikoa. Family trees are confusing, especially this one. Devoted fans of Raw might remember that Lance once wrestled Shane McMahon on the show during his feud with Roman Reigns, although you would be forgiven for forgetting that mess ever happened. Being humiliated by Shane-O aside, Lance has had quite the career outside of WWE, winning multiple titles in his grandfather's home promotion. He's also been successful in Major League Wrestling, winning 2 sets of tag titles alongside Juicy for Now. He's wrestled for House of Glory and Pro Wrestling Noah and has mixed it up with the likes of Rhett Titus, Rich Swann, and once had a tag team match where his partner was Gangrel. Bucket list material for most active wrestlers, or at least it should be, eh? Though he's never quite cracked the big leagues, Lance is still a decent worker with a solid resume of achievements in pro wrestling. Maybe one day he'll get the chance to get his win back against Shane now that his family and not the McMahons basically run WWE. Number 31, Black Pearl. Reno Anoa'i is the nephew of Wild Samoan Afa, so it was only fitting that the 6'5", 245-pound powerhouse got his start in his uncle's WXW promotion. He primarily worked for them and a couple of small-time indies for the first couple of years of his career before he left for Italy in the new Wrestling Evolution promotion that was booked by his cousin Rikishi. It was for NWE that Black Pearl would enjoy his most success, frequently teaming with Rikishi in main events and becoming the company's first World Heavyweight Champion when he beat Scott Steiner in a tournament final. The most noteworthy thing the Count did besides NWE was wrestle on that bonkers Hulkamania tour of Australia in 2009. After a good 4 years working for NWE, Black Pearl became a trainer and worked shows for the Knox Pro Academy, the LA-based school he co-founded with Rikishi. They continue to run it to this day, though Black Pearl hasn't wrestled on a show since 2018. Number 30, LA Smooth. Lloyd Anoa'i, yet another son of Afa, has wrestled under many names over the years. These include Alofa, the Tahitian Savage, and Fred Williams. What, really? Anyway, his most famous moniker is easily LA Smooth, which sounds like a Grand Theft Auto radio station if you're asking me. He's been around for a very long time, getting his start back in 1990, and he's still doing his thing as recently as this year. Fans of a certain vintage might remember him from early 90s WWF, where he tangoed with the 1-2-3 Kid, Savio Vega, and more. This is where his name was changed to Fred Williams, because of course it was. In Puerto Rico, he is a 9-time World Wrestling Council Tag Team Champion, with most of his reigns coming alongside members of his own family. The Smooth gimmick actually came from his brief stint in ECW, where he was part of the Samoan Gangster Party. He's never been a major player in a major company, but for his sheer longevity and the influence he continues to have as a wrestling trainer, LA Smooth deserves some recognition. Whose game is it? Oh, sorry, wrong LA. Number 29, Sean Maluta. Cast your minds back to 2017, a time where so many of the bad things in the world today hadn't happened yet. WWE had just launched the Cruiserweight Classic, and the main event of the tournament's first show was Japanese legend Kota Ibushi against an unknown lad from American Samoa, Sean Maluta. Maluta, the nephew of Afa, would stick around a little bit in WWE following his loss to Ibushi, turning up in NXT and 205 Live as and when he was needed. He lasted until 2019 before he was let go and has since plied his trade on the indies, wrestling for Full Impact Pro, the NWA, and of course Uncle Afa's WXW. He also made a few appearances for All Elite Wrestling, including getting eaten alive by Lance Archer, which was very much the fashion at the time. Though he's yet to do anything particularly noteworthy in wrestling, the fact that Maluta has wrestled for the USA's top 2 promotions more than once is pretty damn impressive. He's only 35 years old too, so he's still got plenty of time in the business ahead of him to go even further than he's already gone. Number 28, Manu. Afa Anoa'i Jr. is, you guessed it, another son of Afa Anoa'i. What gave it away? Junior made his wrestling debut at the preposterously young age of 14 and was picked up by WWE in 2006. He made his main roster debut the following year on Heat, losing a match against Hacksaw Jim Duggan in 2007. What the hell? With that minor hurdle out of the way, the newly christened Manu quickly made friends with a young Cody Rhodes and Ted DiBiase Jr., the stable that would eventually become Legacy. I say eventually because the group was only properly formed when Randy Orton ordered that Manu be booted out. In fact, he was gone from the company entirely by 2009. He's since bounced back and enjoys a comfortable existence on the indies today, including a single dark match for Ring of Honor in 2018 and the obligatory stint in WXW for Afa Sr. He's won pretty much every single one of their titles, including a reign as the company's top champ. Unfortunately for Manu, he will forever be known as that guy that wasn't good enough to hang with Legacy, which hasn't done his own legacy any favors whatsoever. Number 27, 1. Sim Snuka. Superfly Jimmy Snuka was married to Peter Maiavia's niece, Sharon Ely, thus making him a member of the dynasty even though he was born in Fiji rather than Samoa. As a result, his children qualify for this list alongside him, including his son Jimmy Jr., aka Sim Snuka. Sim joined the wrestling business relatively late, but quickly found his footing in OVW. There, he would form a team with Cliff Compton, inspired by the greasers of the 1950s, and thus Deuce and Domino were born. Oh boy. Snuka, who was Deuce in case anybody cares, made his main roster debut in 2007 and captured the WWE Tag Team Championships shortly thereafter. They would hold the gold for 133 days, which is no mean feat. It's just a shame that they were the absolute pits. He would later flirt with the idea of joining Legacy, which went nowhere before participating in one of the greatest matches of all time. Well, I say participating. He was the cameraman who failed to catch The Undertaker during his WrestleMania 25 match with Shawn Michaels. Yeah, that still counts as participating, right? An up and down career for sure. Sim wasn't always necessarily good, but he certainly was memorable. Well, I'm sure the dead man hasn't forgotten about him anyway. Number 26, Tamina. Can't have one Snuka child without the other, right? Jimmy's daughter and Sim's sister, Sarona Tamina Snuka, is also a distant member of the Anoa'i clan. She made her WWE debut in 2010 alongside a little tag team known as the Usos. One of the most physically imposing women WWE have ever had on their books, Tamina bounced around from gimmick to gimmick, finding success as the bodyguard of record-setting Divas champion AJ Lee. She was part of Team Bad alongside Naomi and Sasha Banks during the early days of the women's evolution, had partnerships with Lana and Nia Jax, and won the women's tag team championships with Natalya at WrestleMania 37 in one of the greatest Mania moments of all time. That was sarcasm, by the way. Though she's never been especially compelling to watch in the ring, Tamina has managed to stay employed for a lot longer than anybody would have assumed and is considered a safe pair of hands, and she's developed quite the cult following. I mean, it's mainly ironic, but a following is still a following. Hey, at the very least, she hasn't almost killed a Hall of Famer like her brother did. Yet. Number 25, Gary Albright. There's a case to be made that Gary Albright is one of the most interesting members of the entire extended Anoa'i family. Born in Rhode Island and raised in Montana, Albright joined the dynasty when he married Monica Anoa'i, daughter of Afa, who somehow felt like he didn't have enough sons in wrestling already. He was a standout at amateur level, becoming Montana state champion in 1980 and finishing his college career with a record of 58 wins and just 4 losses. He turned pro in 1988 in Stampede Wrestling and turned a great deal of heads, winning the Wrestling Observer newsletter's Rookie of the Year award. Albright would go on to have great matches in UWF International and All Japan, but tragedy struck in the year 2000 when he suffered a heart attack during a match and died in the ring. In his 36 years on Earth, Albright made a huge impression and could easily have been a much bigger deal had he lived a longer life. Whilst we'll never know how his career may have turned out, his work during the 90s, particularly overseas, is enough to secure him this spot on the list. Number 24, Hikuleo. The Rock has often spoken about how he considers Tonga Fafita, better known as Haku or Meng, as his uncle. Recently, Haku's kids, Tama Tonga and Tanga Loa, joined the Bloodline, so we thought it was only fair that his other son got a mention. Also, you really gonna tell Haku no? Didn't think so. Though he's technically Haku's nephew, Hikuleo was adopted by the former King of the Ring and is now considered his son. He made his pro wrestling debut in 2016 and joined New Japan Pro Wrestling as a young lion the year after. He went on to join 3 of his fellow family members as part of Bullet Club and began appearing on shows in both Japan and in the United States. He's already been strong openweight, strong tag team and IWGP tag team champion, and it's clear that the company have big plans for the Hickster going forward. He wasn't the best in the ring to begin with, as everyone on Twitter took great pleasure in pointing out, but Hikuleo has come a long way in a short space of time and became one of the more recognizable gaijin in Japanese wrestling. Reportedly leaving New Japan earlier this year, it'll sure be interesting to see what he does next. Number 23, the Tonga Kid. Elvira Anoa'i, daughter of founding dynasty members Amatua Nahi Anoa'i and Leoso Ripley, got married to Salofa Fatu Sr. And that is how the Fatu name entered the Anoa'i family tree. They had several children together, one of whom was called Sam, Sam, who would find success in the ring under the names the Samoan Savage, Tama, and the Tonga Kid. He first appeared in WWE alongside his cousin Jimmy Snuka as part of Superfly's rivalry with Rowdy Roddy Piper. He would later compete under the name Tama as one half of the Islanders with Haku and challenge the likes of the Hart Foundation and Strikeforce for the World Tag Team titles. In WCW, he revived the Samoan SWAT team and Wild Samoan names alongside Fatu, aka Rikishi, and rubbed elbows with names like Arn Anderson, the Steiners, and Sting. He might never have won any major championships, but Tonga Kid was part of wrestling during one of its busiest and most important eras and played his part in the careers of many future legends. He's also in the classic fantasy movie Highlander, which has nothing to do with wrestling but is still pretty bloody cool. Number 22, Rosie. The son of wild Samoan seeker and older brother of a certain tribal chief, Matt Anoa'i is better known to WWE audiences as the superhero in training, Rosie. He got his start in ECW, where he and Samu feuded with the Gangsters over the World Tag Team Championships. His next major appearance would come in WWE, where he and his cousin Jamal, who would later be repackaged as Umaga, would form one of the most imposing teams of the Ruthless Aggression era, 3 Minute Warning. As lapdogs of Eric Bischoff, 3 Minute Warning would interrupt any segment the Raw GM was bored of after 180 seconds and usually brutalize whoever was involved. This included that time they attacked the lesbians, which still ranks as one of the most surreal moments in TV history, and greatest. Then came his run as sidekick to the Hurricane, which landed Rosie a World Tag Team Championship reign. This gimmick was super over and is largely why Matt is remembered to this day, which is a hell of a lot better than him committing a hate crime on live TV. Following his WWE run, he had a decent spell in All Japan as Rosie. Matt Anoa'i sadly passed away in 2017 at the age of 47. Number 21, Bad Luck Fale. It was only after a mutual relative commented on a picture of them in the New Japan dojo that Tama Tonga and Bad Luck Fale realized that they were related. A cousin of Tama, Tangaloa, and Hikuleo, the underboss made the leap to wrestling after a career in rugby union, and in 2013, he made New Japan history when he teamed up with an Irish guy called Prince Devitt. Alongside Devitt, Tama Tonga, and Carl Anderson, Fale was one of the founding members of the Bullet Club and is the only original to have never left the stable. He has been there for all of its biggest moments, and whilst he's never been their main attraction, he has played his part in making them what they are today. Fale is far from the greatest worker in the world, especially compared to some of his stablemates, but his accolades speak for themselves. IWGP Intercontinental Champion, IWGP Tag Team Champion, Never Openweight 6-Man Champion, Fale has won them all and looked absolutely terrifying doing so. Outside of the ring, he's also had a hand in training the likes of Aaron Hanare and Jay White, which isn't too shabby either. Number 20, Tanga Loa. After a brief first stint in WWE as Camacho, hands up if you remember that, Haku's second son spent some time in TNA as Micah, again who the hell remembers that, before finally turning up in New Japan to join his brother Tama Tonga in Bullet Club. As the Gorillas of Destiny, Tanga and Tama became 7-time IWGP Tag Team Champions, a record for any team with those belts. He and his brother also won the ROH Tag titles, the World Tag League in 2020, and Tanga is also a 3-time Never Openweight 6-Man champion too. He's never really been the focus of any big storylines or even won a singles championship in New Japan, but Tanga Loa established himself as an incredibly reliable worker. Number 19, Samu. The eldest of Afa's 7 children, his poor wife Samu actually got his first big break alongside his father, subbing in for an injured Seeker when the Wild Samoans were WWF World Tag Team Champs. This turned out to be a pretty strong launchpad, as Samu, who was wrestling under the name Samula at the time, was placed into a number of high-profile matches, including as Hulk Hogan's tag team partner on a 1984 tour of Japan. It was after leaving the Fed that our hero would form his most lasting partnership alongside his cousin Salofa. The pair initially began competing as the Samoan SWAT team, where they were managed by future wise man Paul Heyman in WCW before rejoining the WWF as the Head Shrinkers. Though the team only managed a single tag title reign, Samu was still a popular fixture of early 90s Federation TV and would enjoy a solid independent career after leaving the company. Yes, that did include a stint in his dad's promotion, but do we even need to say that at this point? Number 18, Jacob Fatu. Of all the living family members on this list, Jacob Fatu might just be the one with the most potential going forward. The eldest son of the Tonga kid, Fatu was a troubled teenager who actually did time for robbery. According to the man himself, he saw his cousins the Usos on TV whilst in jail, which made him want to turn his life around and become a professional wrestler. He took to the sport like a duck to water, a gigantic terrifying duck that can do a double jump moonsault. The Samoan werewolf has blown everyone away since he made his debut in 2012, making a particularly big impact in Major League Wrestling, where he was a major star and reigned as their heavyweight champion for over 2 years. Hey, long title reigns clearly run in the family. He recently made his way to WWE and has wowed audiences with his sheer athleticism, especially given his size. The future is very, very bright for Jacob Fatu, and also he's apparently got 7 kids, so it's good to know that those Anoa'i genes aren't going anywhere anytime soon. Number 17, Afa. As one half of the Wild Samoans, Afa was one of the first Anoa'i wrestlers to achieve major mainstream success. Alongside his brother, who we'll get to in just a sec, he got his start in Stu Hart's Stampede Wrestling before winding up in the World Wrestling Federation under the watchful eye of manager Lou Albano. The Samoans were presented as wild savages, unable to speak save for a few grunts and being completely impervious to head-based attacks. They won the World Tag Team Championships 3 times, including one reign that lasted 8.5 months, and Afa himself had world title matches against both Bob Backlund and Hulk Hogan. His final stint in the company would be mostly as a manager, after which he would retire in 1995. He continued to play a role in the wrestling business, training up-and-coming talent, and even served as the trainer on the film The Wrestler. Afa sadly passed away on August 16, 2024 at the age of 80, less than 2 months after his brother Sika's passing. Number 16, Sika. The first of many wrestlers to be trained by his brother Afa, Sika also got started in Stampede before following his sibling to the WWF. The pair would have multiple great feuds in the tag team scene, including with Tony Atlas and his partner, their cousin Rocky Johnson. A feud based on infighting within the Anoa'i family? That'll never get over. The reason Sika is higher on this list is that Afa actually stepped away from full-time wrestling whilst his old partner was still going. He had a brief run as an undefeated monster, formed a partnership with Kamala, and even got on the card at a WrestleMania, something that Afa never did. Sika might just have the upper hand due to longevity, but the Wild Samoans definitely deserve to be applauded as a duo. They were one of the most memorable teams of their era, and their success paved the way for future generations of Anoa'i wrestlers. Sika passed away on June 25, 2024 at the age of 79. His legacy is continued today by his son, Roman Reigns. Number 15, Tama Tonga. Tama Tonga, another adopted son of Haku, has only been in WWE for a few months, but he has had a whole other life outside the company's walls. After receiving training from his father and the Dudley Boys, among others, Tama traveled to Japan, where he impressed those in the know at New Japan Pro Wrestling. In 2013, along with fellow listmate Bad Luck Fale, he was among the first members of Bullet Club, a group he would remain involved with for almost a decade. We've already covered his success as part of the Gorillas of Destiny with his adoptive brother Tanga, but Tama's accomplishments do not stop there. As a singles wrestler, he's a 4-time never openweight champion, while he's also reigned twice as CMLL Tag Team Champion down in Mexico. And of course, he's been a world champion in WXW, because who hasn't been at this point, eh? With his and his brother's WWE journey only just getting started, there is every chance Tama could become an even bigger star. Now a tag team champion in WWE, Tama's star power is growing every single week. Once again, the future is very bright. Number 14, Solo Sikoa. I could start this entry by talking about Solo Sikoa's time in NXT, but all I'd really mention was that weird feud he had with Boa. Remember Boa? Didn't think so. Brother to the Usos and yet another of Rikishi's sons, Sikoa made one of the great recent main roster debuts when he helped Roman Reigns defeat Drew McIntyre at Clash of the Castle 2021. His insertion into the Bloodline provided the group with a much-needed breath of fresh air. He was presented as an absolute brute, the group's rough and ready enforcer, willing to do anything to keep the family at the top. He's been in War Games, main evented pay-per-views, and even beat John Cena clean as a sheet at a pay-per-view, which we will remind you of, seeing how WWE seems to have forgotten it ever happened. Also, lest we forget, he was the one who cost Cody Rhodes the Undisputed Championship at WrestleMania 39. It's alright, we can all feel a lot better about that now after Mania 40. Cool your jets, pal. Now heading up the Bloodline 2.0, he's not had a massively long or accomplished in-ring career, but Solo's proximity to one of the greatest wrestling storylines of all time has done wonders for his stock, and he should be a big-time player for many years to come. Number 13, Nia Jax. The daughter of Peter Maiavia's first cousin, Nia Jax became the latest member of the dynasty to join WWE when she arrived in NXT back in 2015. Her intimidating size and power meant that she stood out right away and was immediately placed into a prominent storyline with women's champion Bayley, which saw her team up with everyone's favorite super worker Eva Marie. Jax was too much of an attraction to be kept in developmental for long, so she was called up to the main roster about a year into her run. Since then, she's been a constant presence on Raw and SmackDown, apart from that bit where she got released, and has been involved in high-profile feuds with some of the biggest names going. She had her first WrestleMania match in a four-way against Bayley, Charlotte Flair, and Sasha Banks, and defeated Alexa Bliss the following year to win the Raw Women's title. She also accidentally made Becky Lynch into the biggest star in wrestling when she smashed her face in. Happy accidents and all that. Nia still isn't everybody's cup of tea, but she has shown massive improvement since she came back into WWE and was recently awarded with a world title win. Nice. Number 12, Peter Maivia. When Fanene Peter Anderson, best known as High Chief Peter Maivia, formed a blood brother pact with Anoa'i Anoa'i, their two families joined together as one and created the Samoan wrestling dynasty as we know it today. Basically, he's one half of the whole reason we have this list, so if you don't like it, you know where to direct your complaints. Maivia, father-in-law of Rocky Johnson and grandfather of a certain people's champion, began wrestling in the NWA's Hawaiian territory in the early 1960s. He would travel all over the world, wrestling in places like the UK, France, and New Zealand before making stops in American promotions like World Class Championship Wrestling and the fledgling Worldwide Wrestling Federation. Sadly, Maivia passed away at the tragically young age of 45. Even so, he achieved a lot in his brief time in the business, winning championships and sharing the ring with legends of the past and future. There's also the small matter of him being responsible for one of the greatest wrestling lineages of all time. Number 11, Naomi. Trinity McRae, the wrestler best known as WWE's Naomi, became Trinity Fatu in 2014 when she married long-term partner Jimmy Uso. There was a whole episode of Total Divas about it if you're interested. While she hasn't been incorporated into the Bloodline saga on TV, she is still very much a part of the family, which means we get to talk about her many accomplishments in the squared circle. After years of being labeled one of the most underrated female talents on the roster, Naomi finally got her time to shine, or glow if you will, once the women's evolution kicked off in earnest. She was there from the very start, teaming with Tamina and Sasha Banks before becoming a two-time SmackDown Women's Champion and a Women's Tag Team Champion to boot. And also, don't forget about her great work in TNA Wrestling either. It happened whether you watched it or not. Even with all the success Naomi has had, there's still a feeling that she's not being utilized fully. She is insanely talented, flexible and athletic like you wouldn't believe, and she's so infectiously cheerful that it's impossible not to back her. Now that her in-laws basically run the company, maybe we'll see her get the push her talent and likability warrants. Fingers crossed. Number 10, Umaga. Depending on when you were watching WWE, you will know the late Eddie Fatu by one of two names. If you watched in 2002 to 2003, then you will recognize him as Jamal, one half of 3 Minute Warning alongside Rosie. If you watched between 2006 and 2009, then you will know him as the Samoan Bulldozer and the man with the deadliest thumb in all of combat sports, the mighty Umaga. Despite only being around for 3 years, there was a lot of memorable stuff crammed into the Umaga run. His initial undefeated streak, his wars with John Cena, the Battle of the Billionaires at WrestleMania 23, his 2 Intercontinental Championship reigns, the fact that William Regal could never say his name right. It was all great stuff. Eddie Fatu Fatu sadly passed away in December 2009 at the age of just 36. The Umaga gimmick lives on not only in the minds of fans but also in his family members, many of whom have adopted his signature moves as their own in tribute. To think that he could very well still be wrestling now makes the situation even sadder, but goodness gracious me, did he pack a lot into his all-too-short life. Number 9. Rocky Johnson. Born Wade Douglas Bowles in Nova Scotia, Canada, the man who would later be known as Rocky Johnson, a nod to boxing legends Rocky Marciano and Jake Johnson, entered the world of wrestling in the 1960s. He won a bunch of regional championships all over the NWA of both the tag team and singles variety, but it would be in 1983 in WWF where he would achieve his most famous result. Alongside Tony Atlas, Johnson became one half of the first ever African-American tag team champions in WWE history, and one of the first black men to hold a major wrestling title of any distinction. This win shattered all sorts of racial barriers in the deeply divided sport and is still regarded as an all-time great moment to this day. Johnson had first met Anoa'i when he was working a tag team match with her father at an independent show. They got married in 1978, and with that, Johnson became a member of the Anoa'i family. The two would have a child together, but you'll need to be patient to hear about him. As for the Soul Man, he was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2008 and passed away in 2020, aged 75. Number 8. Haku. Tonga Fafita, best known as either Haku, Meng, or the scariest bastard to have ever lived, is easily the most tangential member of the Anoa'i dynasty. He isn't actually a blood relative of anyone else on the family tree. Instead, he's a close family friend of the Johnsons, with The Rock referring to him as an unofficial uncle. Still, he's here now, and there's no way in hell anybody is going to get him to leave. Haku was trained to wrestle in All Japan by the legendary Giant Baba. He would debut in the Fed in 1985, where he performed as one half of the Islanders alongside the Tonga Kid, played a crucial role in Andre the Giant's farewell run as his partner in the Colossal Connection, and was a holder of the King of the Ring crown. He won titles all over the world, but it's the stories of his legendary toughness that most people know him for. I could just sit here and tell some of them, but then this video would be about 15 hours long. An icon, a leader, a madman. There is nobody else quite like Haku. And you know what? Thank God for that. Can you imagine if there were more of him? These Hakus would destroy us all. Number 7. Jimmy Uso. When Jimmy Uso made his WWE debut in 2010 alongside his brother Jay and their cousin Tamina, there was no indication that he would become one of the company's most marquee talents over the next decade and a half. As a tag team, the Usos went from happy-go-lucky babyfaces to ruthless thugs to the crack unit at the center of the Bloodline. They are 8-time tag team champions, with their 5th reign as SmackDown champs being the longest tag title run in the history of WWE. And all this without mentioning their classic matches with the Street Profits, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, and especially the New Day. Whilst he's yet to properly find his feet as a single star, Jimmy has still been involved in some of the greatest storyline moments of recent years. From his sacrifice at Hell in a Cell 2020 to super kicking Roman Reigns to his ill-judged return to the Bloodline at SummerSlam 2023, Jimmy has done it all, even if his eventual WrestleMania clash with his brother stunk to high heaven. Number 6. Jey Uso. Sorry Jimmy, but your brother has you beaten hands down on this one. Similarly to his twin, nobody expected too much from Jey Uso upon his WWE debut. They certainly didn't expect him to become the first Universal title challenger for Roman Reigns off the back of his heel turn in 2020, nor that he would become the linchpin at the heart of the Bloodline story. He's not done everything right, the whole Yeet thing really winds me up, but Jey has stepped up to his main event moniker in a big way. All of his matches with Roman have been memorable in one way or another, and he's found a way to connect with the crowd all on his own. He's also got one more tag title to his name than his brother, as he reigned with Cody Rhodes for 9 days back in 2023. Had you forgotten about that too? Of all the people involved in the Bloodline saga, Jey's standing has been elevated the most, to the point where he can now challenge for world titles on pay-per-view and not feel out of place, and we're all excited to see what comes next after his big Intercontinental title win. Big Quiche must be immensely proud of his 2 boys. Number 5. Jimmy Snuka. Jimmy Snuka was a horrible person who may or may not have killed killed someone. Sorry, had to get that out of the way early because I'm about to praise his talent as a pro wrestler quite a lot. Superfly, who qualifies for this list as a husband of Peter Maiavia's niece, was born in Fiji and got his start as a wrestler in Hawaii. He worked all over the country, including a legendary stint in the World Wrestling Federation, where fans cheered his uber-athletic style despite the fact that he was a nasty heel. He never won any titles in WWE, but did become the first ever Eastern Championship Wrestling Champion, the belt that would later become the ECW Heavyweight title. An innovative high flyer in an era where muscle-bound meatheads tended to dominate the industry, Snuka was truly one of a kind and helped set the bar for those who preferred jumping off the top rope to grabbing a chin lock. A truly incredible Hall of Fame performer who left an indisputable mark on the sport, the late Jimmy Snuka's in-ring work is legendary, even if events in his personal life cloud his accomplishments. Number 4, Rikishi. Salofa Fatu Jr. is actually one half of a set of twins with the Tonga Kid. Wrestling fans would have been aware of him as Fatu, one half of the Samoan SWAT team / the Head Shrinkers. However, in 1999, things changed forever when he put on a pair of yellow sunglasses and started getting his bum out. This was the birth of Rikishi, the dancing happy-go-lucky member of Too Cool. Alongside Scotty 2 Hotty and Grandmaster Sexay, Rikishi regularly got some of the loudest reactions at a time where Stone Cold and The Rock were in their prime. He won 3 tag team titles, an Intercontinental title, and ran over Steve Austin, although the less said about that, the better. We can talk about the time he fell off Hell in a Cell though, that was pretty damn cool. He might have never been a world champion or main evented a WrestleMania, but Rikishi's greatness comes in the moments he made, the joy he brought, and the image that will live on in wrestling history forever. That is the image of him wiping his backside in his opponent's faces. And also, at the rate he's producing children, he will be responsible for half the WWE roster within the next decade. Number 3, Yokozuna. At WrestleMania 9, the Anoa'is welcomed their first ever world champion into the family. Which Samoan wrestler had this honor? The one who was pretending to be Japanese. Rodney Anoa'i, son of Afra and Sika's brother Afoa, scored his major breakthrough in New Japan, where he would regularly team with the likes of Scott Hall, Bam Bam Bigelow, and Vader. This success is no doubt why, in 1992, WWE decided he would portray a Japanese sumo wrestler called Yokozuna. Yoko's impressive size and the fact that he clearly wasn't on the roids at a time where WWE were mired in scandal saw him receive a huge push. He won the 1993 Royal Rumble and would become a 2-time world champion in the company that same year, including getting an elusive win over Hulk Hogan. He accomplished so very much, but sadly, that same size that had made Yokozuna a star also led to serious health problems, resulting in him plummeting down the card and into obscurity. He was released by the company in 1998 and passed away just 2 years later. A sad end, but his brief career at the top level was replete with memorable moments and matches, and the Hall of Famer is well remembered by his fans and family. Number 2, Roman Reigns. What is there to say about Roman Reigns that hasn't already been said? From breakout debutant in The Shield to hated overexposed main eventer to one of the most revolutionary and dominant top champions in WWE history, the big dog has done it all and has the title belts to prove it. From the moment he burst onto the scene in 2012, Reigns has always been in the conversation for reasons good and bad, and he has defined WWE in one way or another for over a decade now. There's also the little fact that his initial feud with Jey Uso and subsequent formation of the Bloodline was what brought the Anoa'i family to prominence in the first place. I mean, it had been acknowledged on WWE programming before, sure, but never quite like this. For this son of wild Samoan Sika, family means everything, and he has definitely proven himself worthy of his place in it. He's also earned his lucrative part-time schedule as he has solidified himself as a special attraction and big match player. However, there was just one other person who picked him to the post. Somebody who, oh come on, we all know who it is. Let's just get on with it. Number 1, The Rock. Roman Reigns may call himself the head of the table, but for the real biggest name in the Anoa'i family, we need to visit his cousin. Much like Reigns, most of Dwayne Johnson's career has been documented in excruciating detail. A college football hopeful who became the first third-generation WWE wrestler in history, Rocky Maivia, as he was then known, was initially hated before he completely changed up his act and started referring to himself in the third person. 2000. The Rock became a sensation, helping to lead the company into its most revered era ever. He is a multi-time world champion, has main evented WrestleMania on countless occasions, and is still the gold standard when it comes to wrestlers on the mic. And then there's all the movie stuff too, and the fact that he's on the TKO board, and that he can eat more pancakes than anyone else on Earth. Easily the most famous former wrestler on the planet, The Rock is a pop culture icon in so many different ways that it's hard to keep track of them all, and is the crown jewel of a family that has produced more than its fair share of gems. I think we can all raise a glass of delicious Terramana tequila to that. If you smell... See ya.